Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever felt like you didn't belong? Like every eye in the room was a spotlight on your insecurities? Today, we're following a journey that many of us face but rarely talk about: gym anxiety. We're going to see what happens when the fear of judgment meets the desire for change. But this isn't just a story about fitness. This is about the language of courage. As we walk through these 10 chapters, we're going to master the English you need for real-life challenges. We'll break down action verbs for physical movement, phrasal verbs used in the fitness world, idioms for overcoming mental blocks. By the end of this video, you won't just know how to describe a workout, you'll know how to describe the feeling of conquering your fears in English. Stick around until the end, because I have a special vocabulary challenge in the quiz section to see how much you've picked up. Let's step inside. Chapter 1, The Threshold.
The engine hums a low, steady rhythm that matches the thumping in John's chest. Through the rain-streaked windshield, the neon sign of the gym flickers like a warning light. The Iron Temple, the regulars call it, but to John it looks like a fortress built to keep people like him out. He looks at his hands, gripped so tightly around the steering wheel that his knuckles have turned white. Every time he sees a shadow move behind the gym's glass front, his stomach drops another inch. He thinks about his old clothes, the ones that used to fit, and the way the doctor looked at his chart last week without saying a word. The inner weight room wall isn't made of brick or stone. It is made of the clanging sound of metal plates hitting the floor. It is the sound of heavy breathing and the sight of people who move as if they were carved from granite. John feels like a blurry sketch in a room full of high-definition masterpieces. "Just 1 foot," he whispers to the empty car, his voice sounding thin and foreign in the cramped space. He reaches for the door handle, but his fingers hesitate, frozen by the sudden thought of 100 eyes judging his gait. He imagines the silence that will fall when he enters, the way the music might stop just so they can watch him fail. But then he remembers the silence of his own living room and how much heavier that feels than any barbell. He pushes the door open, the cold air hitting his face like a challenge he is finally ready to accept. The heavy glass door closes behind John with a soft thud, cutting off the safety of the outside world. The air inside is thick with the scent of rubber, cleaning spray, and the sharp tang of hard work. John stands in the middle of the lobby, feeling his pulse drum against his throat like a trapped bird. Ahead of him, the machines stretch out in endless, confusing rows of chrome and leather layers. To anyone else, they are tools. To John, they look like complex puzzles designed to highlight his ignorance. He walks toward a seated chest press, his footsteps sounding impossibly loud on the matted floor. He stares at the diagrams on the side of the machine, trying to decipher the bold arrows and technical labels. The words pin-loaded, alignment, and range of motion swim before his eyes until they lose all meaning. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees a woman nearby move with fluid, effortless precision between her sets. He reaches for the metal pin to adjust the weight, but his hand shakes and the pin clatters against the stack. The sharp metallic ring echoes through the corner, and John freezes, certain that everyone is staring at his clumsy hands. He realizes he doesn't just lack the strength of an athlete, he lacks the vocabulary of this mechanical world. He feels like a traveler in a foreign land without a map, surrounded by people who speak a language of movement he hasn't learned. Still, he takes a seat, grips the handles, and prepares to push against the weight of his own hesitation. The fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting a harsh, unforgiving glow across the wall of mirrors. Everywhere John turns, he is forced to face the one person he has spent years trying to avoid: himself. In the reflection, his oversized t-shirt looks like a tent, and his movements feel heavy and uncoordinated. He stands between two regulars who move with the rhythmic grace of pendulums, their muscles rippling under the glass. John tries to focus on his own reflection, but his eyes keep drifting to the gaps between what he is and what they are. The mirror's verdict feels like a physical weight, heavier than the 10-pound dumbbells resting in his palms. He watches his own face turn a bright, blotchy red, a stark contrast to the cool, focused expressions around him. His inner critic begins to whisper, a familiar voice telling him that he is a glitch in a room full of perfection. He adjusts his stance, but even the way he stands feels wrong, as if his very presence is an apology for taking up space. For a moment, the urge to drop the weights and bolt for the exit is so strong it makes his knees weak. He imagines the mirrors capturing his retreat, a permanent record of the moment he gave up on himself again. But then he catches his own eyes in the glass, not the shape of his body, but the spark of defiance in his stare. He realizes the mirror doesn't just show his flaws, it shows a man who actually showed up despite the fear. He takes a deep breath, ignores the masterpieces to his left, and focuses on the sketch that is finally starting to take shape. John moves toward the cable machines, trying to navigate the crowded floor without bumping into anyone. He finds an open station and begins to reach for the handle, but a tall man in a tank top steps into his path. "Hey man, mind if I work in?" the stranger asks, his voice casual but his presence commanding. John freezes, his mind racing to translate the phrase "work in," while his heart hammers against his ribs. He nods quickly, not wanting to seem rude, even though he has no idea what the unspoken protocol actually requires. He watches as the man efficiently changes the weight stack, performs a set of curls, and then steps back with a polite nod. John realizes the gym is governed by a hidden set of laws: how to share space, when to speak, and where to look. He accidentally leaves his water bottle on a bench someone else is using, and the quiet clearing of a throat behind him feels like a siren. "Sorry," John mutters, his face flushing as he scrambles to move his things out of the way. He feels like a guest who has forgotten to take off his shoes, tripping over the invisible social lines of this iron culture. The fear of judgment isn't just about his body anymore, it's about his status as an outsider who doesn't know the rules. He watches the regulars exchange quick, silent fist bumps and brief words of encouragement between their heavy lifts. It is a community built on shared effort, a brotherhood that John feels he is watching from behind a thick pane of glass. But as he finishes his own set and wipes down the equipment, he realizes that following the rules is the first step toward belonging. He places the pin back in the stack and walks away, feeling a tiny bit less like a stranger and a tiny bit more like a student. The air in the gym feels different now, no longer a barrier, but a medium through which John must move. He reaches the rowing machine, the seat sliding back and forth with a rhythmic, mechanical hum. As he pulls the handle toward his chest, he stops looking at the people around him and starts listening to his own lungs. The first drop of sweat stings his eye, a salty reminder that his body is finally beginning to respond.
His muscles start to burn, a sharp, searing heat that feels like a physical conversation between his mind and his limbs. In this moment, the anxiety that usually fills his head is replaced by the singular need for oxygen. The inner critic is silenced by the sheer effort of the movement, drowned out by the thumping of his pulse. He isn't thinking about the mirrors or the athletes anymore. He is thinking about the next 30 seconds of the clock. For the first time in his life, John feels the strange, primal satisfaction of pushing himself to the absolute limit. He watches the sweat drip onto the black mat below, marking the spot where his old self is slowly being washed away. The fear of being watched is replaced by the pride of being active, a shift that feels more important than any number on a scale. He completes the final pull of the set, his arms trembling and his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The exhaustion is heavy, but beneath it lies a flicker of energy he hasn't felt in years. He realizes that he didn't just survive the workout, he owned it, one drop of sweat at a time. The rhythm John had found in the previous chapter is suddenly shattered by a loud, synchronized thud. A group of 3 powerlifters enters the corner of the weight room, their presence expanding to fill every square inch of the space. They move with a level of intensity that makes John's moderate effort feel like a walk in the park. As they load plate after plate onto the bar, John feels the old familiar shadow of comparisonitis creeping back in. He watches them lift weights that he can't even imagine moving, and his own 5-pound dumbbells suddenly feel like toys. The ghost of comparisons whispers that his progress is a joke, that he is merely playing at something they have mastered. He finds himself slowing down, his movements becoming hesitant as he subconsciously tries to shrink away from their energy. One of the lifters lets out a guttural shout during a heavy rep, and the raw power of it makes John jump slightly. For a moment, the wall between the elite and the beginner feels 1,000 miles thick and impossible to climb. He looks at his own reflection again, and instead of the spark of defiance, he sees a man who feels like an imposter. He is tempted to cut his workout short, to slip out the side door while they are distracted by their own strength. But then he notices one of the athletes glancing at his own reflection with a look of intense frustration. Even the experts have goals they haven't reached. Even the strong are fighting a battle against their own limits. John realizes that comparing his chapter 1 to their chapter 20 is a trap designed to make him quit. He grips his weights tighter, turns his back to the spectacle, and decides to stay in his own lane.
The silence between the machines feels heavier than the iron itself, until John realizes he is standing right in front of the rack he needs. A tall woman with a focused expression is using the adjustable bench, her movements precise and rhythmic. John hesitates, his old habit of retreating starting to pull at his heels like an anchor. He practices the sentence in his mind 3 times, his tongue feeling thick and clumsy against his teeth. Are you using this set?" he finally blurts out, his voice cracking slightly in the dry gym air. The woman pauses, removes one earbud, and offers a small, sweat-streaked smile that catches him off guard. "Just finished my last set. It's all yours," she says, sliding off the bench and nodding toward the weights. That single bridge of one word shatters the glass wall John had built between himself and the athletes. He realizes that the intimidating people around him are actually just neighbors sharing a common goal. This small verbal exchange humanizes the room, turning a battlefield of judgment into a shared workspace. He feels a strange rush of adrenaline that has nothing to do with lifting and everything to do with belonging. Asking a question wasn't an admission of weakness, it was an act of entry into the gym's social fabric. As he adjusts the bench to his own height, he feels the weight of his social anxiety lift just a fraction. He isn't just a spectator anymore. He is a participant who knows how to speak the language of the floor. John takes his seat, grips the bar, and realizes that the hardest part of the day wasn't the muscles, it was the conversation.
The alarm clock wails at 6 in the morning, sounding like a physical blow to John's pounding head. He tries to roll out of bed, but his thighs scream in protest, a sharp reminder of yesterday's lunges. Every muscle in his body feels like it has been replaced by lead and rusted iron overnight. He sits on the edge of the mattress, staring at his gym shoes with a deep, sinking sense of dread. This is the plateau, the gray space where the initial excitement of starting has completely evaporated. The mirror in his bathroom doesn't show a transformed man, it shows the same tired face and the same soft edges. "What's the point?" he whispers, the old habit of giving up pulling at him like a powerful riptide. He thinks about the long road ahead, the hundreds of hours of sweat required for even a tiny change. The pain isn't just in his hamstrings, it is the mental exhaustion of trying to be someone he isn't yet. He remembers the way his chest felt tight during the last set and how easy it would be to just go back to sleep. But then he remembers the bridge of one word and the nod from the woman at the bench. He realizes that the real-life problem isn't the weight on the bar, it's the weight of his own inconsistency. Gritting his teeth, he forces his swollen feet into his sneakers, one agonizing inch at a time. The victory today isn't going to be a personal record, it is simply the act of showing up when every cell says no. John grabs his keys, limps to the car, and decides that discipline is the only language that matters now.
The automatic click of the gym scanner is the only greeting John needs as he walks through the door. He doesn't pause in the lobby to check his reflection or wait for his heart to stop racing anymore. The scent of rubber and sweat, once a source of panic, now smells like a familiar workspace. He moves across the matted floor with a steady, purposeful gait that he didn't have 3 weeks ago. He doesn't scan the room for exits, he scans the rack for the specific weights he needs for his first set. John realizes he hasn't looked at the elite athletes with envy or fear for several days now. In fact, he catches the eye of a regular, a man who once intimidated him, and receives a short, silent nod. John nods back, a simple gesture that feels like a secret handshake among those who show up. The invisible transformation isn't about the inches lost on his waist, though his clothes do fit differently. It is the way his mind has shifted from "Am I allowed to be here?" to "I have work to do." He adjusts the pin on the cable machine without looking at the diagram, his hands moving with muscle memory. The weight room wall has crumbled into a pile of ordinary dust, leaving only a room full of people trying. He catches a glimpse of himself in the mirror and for the first time doesn't look away in apology. He sees a man who belongs, not because he is perfect, but because he is persistent. John grips the bar, feels the cool steel against his palms, and realizes the gym has finally become his home.
The morning sun streams through the gym windows, lighting up the dust motes dancing over the heavy iron. John finishes his final set of deadlifts, the bar clicking satisfyingly as it settles back into the rack. He stands tall, wiping his forehead with a towel, no longer feeling like a blurry sketch in a high-definition world. Movement near the entrance catches his eye, the heavy glass door swinging open with a hesitant, slow creak. A young man steps inside, clutching a gym bag as if it were a shield against an invisible enemy.
John recognizes that look, the wide eyes, the locked shoulders, the way he lingers near the threshold. The newcomer stares at a complex leg machine, his face clouding with the same language of machines confusion. John feels a surge of memory, a vivid flashback to the weight room wall he once thought was unbreakable. He realizes that his journey wasn't just about his own heart rate, it was about preparing him for this moment. Stepping across the matted floor, John walks toward the young man, his gait steady and relaxed. "Hey man," John says, his voice calm and welcoming in the humming room. "That one's tricky at first." He shows the newcomer how to pull the adjustment pin, explaining the range of motion with easy confidence. The young man's shoulders drop an inch, a small sigh of relief escaping his lips as he nods in thanks. In that moment, John realizes he has finally lifted the heaviest weight of all, the fear of being seen. He isn't just a regular anymore, he is a landmark, a part of the community that helps others belong. John heads toward the exit, a quiet smile on his face, knowing that today he truly walked out a different man.
John's journey reminds us that the heaviest weights we ever lift aren't made of iron, they are made of our own doubts. We often wait until we feel ready or good enough before we step through the door of a new challenge. But as John discovered, the weight room wall only crumbles once you start walking toward it, one shaky step at a time. Whether you are learning a new language or changing your life, remember that every expert was once a beginner who refused to quit. The mirror doesn't define your progress, your persistence does. John's story is a powerful reminder that anxiety is just a feeling, not a barrier. In these 10 chapters, we explored how to face our fears and use the English of everyday struggle. If you want to master the vocabulary we use today, words like threshold, defiance, and consistency, I have a task for you. Head over to the quiz section right now. I've posted a series of questions based on John's journey to help you lock in these new words and phrases. Don't forget to comment below. What is one weight you are trying to lift in your own life right now? I read every single one of your stories. If this story helped you, hit the like button and subscribe to Glisso. We have 300 more real-life stories coming your way to help you master English through the power of narrative. I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye.